Welcome everyone. We will be discussing about stress management and how do we get rid of stress management through effective usage of time. So time and stress management is the topic for discussion in today's presentation. First and foremost, if you look at the picture which has been given in your slide, this person has been bogged down by the number of works that has been pending. And when I say the term bogged down, the other word would be stress, where you are not been able to cope up with the pressure is what stress is all about. It stress, remember, is a psychological, emotional and physiological response. Psychological, you are getting irritated, you are not able to comprehend your thoughts, you are not able to prioritize. Emotional, probably your behaviors are not coherent with your personalities. And physiological is when certain people probably starts with sweating, right? And it can lead to a heart attack as in severe sense of stress. People who are suffering from chronic stress would develop blood sugar as an issue. So there are stressor, which is basically nothing but threatening of the environmental condition, as the case might be. These are the stressors that comes in your mind, and you should be aware of their process altogether. So let us understand why this is important to manage stress. Because if you do not or you're not able to manage stress, it means there is unbalance in your life, both in terms of your attitude, in terms of coping up with your health issues, in terms of your behavior, and in short, overall life becomes not enjoyable. So, stress is important, stress management is important because it leads to a increase organizational cost. Definitely on an individual it has an impact. I've said the health impact for the per se. There is something which goes wrong with your health. There are issues where people are not no longer interested in a job because they are not able to cope up with the pressure that the job is demanding, and then we have something called a burnt out syndrome, or probably person looks for other viable opportunities. The performance decline, and if performance decline of an individual, the productivity of the organization also suffers inevitably. And this are the three various reasons for an individual basis why management of stress is so important. And apart from the fact that, forgetting the individual cost, there are organizational implications too. So relationship. Now let us draw a relationship between performance and the stress level. It's your job performance and the stress level. Stress been accounted in your x-axis, performance in your y-axis. And if you can see the curve, there is an optimum level up to here, optimal level where a person, when subjected to stress, would be able to cope up and give a wonderful performances. But beyond this level, if you are still applying this stress breakdown, you there is a breakdown in the performance, or probably in the individual, or probably with the environmental, and it deteriorates the performance, eventually decline. So there are basically various phases that comes around it. At the initial stage, when the stress level is low, too little or less performances, but as you increase the stress, performances also perform improve. So there is something called an optimal stress, and we should be able to understand, undermine, or pinpoint to which volume of stress, to which degree of stress the people can tolerate, beyond which there is too lesser performance, and probably it is panic sessions and collapses altogether. The performance collapses, there is an indecisiveness. In fact, should I say, the person loses his or her confidence. In short, for your example, for your understanding, I have jotted down certain professions, certain things where stress level is very high, probably for the president of a country. In this scenario, what we are looking forward to it is a highly stressful factor. Then we have the firefighters, probably the environmental is all about time and performances. If time is lost, precious life or property would be damaged. So similarly for senior executive, where you have a lot of deadlines to be measured, Then we have the public relations where you have to control your emotions and your ambience, or should I say, the projected image of the company to be defended upon is what we are looking. And this is how it goes around it. Remember, I have given you a lot many numbers of things, but their ranking and the stress factor is mentioned out here. But many of you will always say that why a particular profession has not been included. If you look at the ranking person, the first top three is what we have discussed it around. Then probably I move to give you just an idea, which is at the 12th position, 16th positions, 20th position, 42 position, and so on and so forth. So there are things that comes around it. A problem with an actuary, a person who's actually looking into the insurance coverage part of it, as what are the premiums and what are the coverage that can be extended. They have a wonderful job at their hand and they can calculate at the luxury of their time. There is no stress available. Remember, people who are going to go for an insurance, they are willing to pay money from their own pocket so as to capture their future performance or eventualities in a nutshell. And that is what we are looking for, an actually performances thereby. So experiencing stressors, there are anticipatory encounter stimulations that comes around it, and this is what we are looking for. There is an experiencing stress in terms of stressors. There are reactions which can be physiological and psychological. Psychological when people are becoming incoherent and they are not, they probably must be panicking. They're not able to comprehend the situation. Physiological, people sweat, people suffer heart attack, people suffer from blood sugars. There are many manifestations. There might be people who under stress would actually get their face redden up altogether. And then there is this something called resiliency. People who can cope up with the stress as on the point of time, and that is what we are looking. Resiliency may be psychological, physical, and social, as the case might be. So let us dwell on the models of stress management. Remember, we are looking at potential stressors, as in the events and issues that leads to stressing, and how do we manage it. If we are not able to manage these stress events or issues, the what are the consequences? Let us understand it. So in personal factors, there might be issues with your family, that you might have a dysfunctional family. There might be issues as the finances are concerned. The financial health might be in a poor condition. We have eventually the health problem as one of the major issues. So these are potential stressors as far as the personal front is concerned. In terms of organizational factors, we have a stressed occupation, immensely high stress occupation in which we are supposed to work under deadline. The job role, the responsibility that comes with the job role, the number of duties that comes around it, it's an overload. Probably people have been unutilized. Why unutilized? You have immense potential and you are qualified to do job, but eventually you're given a job which are of menial in nature, which doesn't require your complete qualification. It's the reverse psychology that comes around it, and you people are get they get stressed because of the underutilization. Then we have the role ambiguity, where there's always a conflict as to who is supposed to do the job. It comes under purview of several of the individual comes around it, so which leads eventually to the role conflict and responsibility for others as a result might be. So you might have to suffer for the consequences for which the other people have done wrongdoings. So this was of organizational factors. Let us proceed with the job environment. Job environment might include poor working condition, organizational politics, and poor work relationship. But how can we forget? We have discussed about the personal factors, organizational factors, and the job environment. But what of the general environmental factors? That is also which leads or which contributes to you being stressed as such, as in economic uncertainty, technological change, and the politics thereby. So these are the potential stressors. And how do we manage it? On an individual levels, we can seek help, seek cooperation, optimum utilization of time if required. If we are unable to cope up with the pressure, why not change a job? Build resiliency, personality, companionship experiences somewhere down the corner. If you can have wonderful uh, partners in your life, probably that helps you to elevate a lot of problems. We can do exercise, diet, health, relaxation, and recreation. Then comes the organizational factor that comes around it. This is all about job design, selection and placement, training and mentoring, team building, employee assistance, communicating, and wellness promotion, as the case might be, as on when on basis what actually happens around there. So we'll talk about the consequences. The consequences of the if you are not able to manage those stress on the stress, what will eventually it lead to? It can have a psychological impact in terms of a heart disease, ulcer, or headaches. People do speak about chronic headaches for no reasons and no rhymes. So this is the psychological effect. Then we have the emotional things where you are always either depressed or anxiety, or there are burnt out issues, or you are basically, when I say burnt out issue, you seems to be frustrated, you seem not to be contented with the present state of affairs. There are behavioral factors, aggression, productivity, avoidance, as the case might be. And then we have the successful coping, high self-esteem, goal accomplishment, feeling of well-being, as the case might be, as on when on basis you go across it. And that is what successful coping would always tell it to you. Then we have the managing the stress. How do we go about managing the stress thereby? First and foremost, be aware of the negative symptoms, the stress symptoms that I'm talking about. Determining the source as what leads to your stress, what leads to your anxiety, what leads to your uncertainty or uneasiness in your cognitive abilities. Determine the cause and then probably cope temporarily with the stress. As to fight it out, probably yes, and try to sort the situation on your own. If not, eliminate the stressors, remove the origin altogether. Do not subject yourself to such kind of situation or experiences, or develop resiliency. And these are the very objective for managing the stress, as the case might be. So, how are you aware of it? If you are not able to understand what exactly, I've just given you a pro forma of to see what actually happens. Is it constant fatigue? Are you always tired or something like that? Low energy levels, recurring headaches, gastrointestinal disorders, bad breath, sweaty hands or feet, dizziness, high blood pressure, and pounding heart. Now, if you can mark it out on your own for your own understanding, which happens on a regular basis, rarely, sometimes, or probably never, as the case might be. So you can mark it down, and if you find it is always or it is bordering on the fourth often and always, then probably you are going through some sort of problem which you are not able to solve it on your own. And we are talking about the physical symptoms, very easy symptoms that can be noticed. We'll talk about the psychological substitutes. Thereby, we need to understand what are the psychological substitutes that comes around it. But believe me, constant fatigue, low energy level, recurrent headache, gastrointestinal disorders, bad breath, sweaty hands or feet, dizziness, high blood pressure, and pounding heart are physical manifestations which easily can be marketed. Now, sources of stress, I have already said it to you. Major organizational stresses are occupation, the job role, and the interpersonal relation. And that is what I've been showing it with the pic out here. Personal stress processors are family problem, financial problem, health problem, and probably if you have any issues with your personality, there might be OCD, compulsive disorder. You have an obsession with certain finickiness that is there in your life, probably. Major environmental stressors, economic uncertainty, political uncertainties, and technological change, as the case might be. This is what we are looking forward to it. So types of stress, causes at time, encounters, situational, and anticipatory. This is what we are looking forward to it. The time, the encounters, the situational, and the anticipatory, which leads to a lot of stress issues, as the case might be. So how do we manage stress? First and foremost thing is to eliminate the event altogether. Eliminate and do not subject yourself to a particular experience or situation, or else you can have developed resiliency, probably able to understand, negate the factors altogether. Or the last one would be, if you cannot do it on a regular basis, can you cope it up temporarily mechanism, as in what can be done, how do you distract your mind, how do you cope up with it. So under eliminate stressors, we will have the permanent effect, the inactive effect that comes around it, the long-term requirement. Develop resiliency is obviously long terms. On the other hand, temporary coping mechanism will always be short term. Developing resiliency would be proactive, whereas temporary coping would be reactive. Developing resiliency would be moderate time required, and short time required would be immediate, as such, as in temporary things are going to go around it. So you need to understand how do you manage stress thereby. So well, let us talk about the resiliency factors. Look, what a wonderful lady she's playing in the pic, as you see. First, get yourself physically engaged, and that is what I will always see. So have your cardiovascular conditioning, proper diet, be healthy. Once you start eating healthy, you live normally. Be social, supportive relationship, mentors, teamwork, as the case might be. We talk about the psychological thing, balanced lifestyle, hardy personality, small win strategy, and relaxation technique, as the case might be out here. So that is what about physiological, social, and psychological factors are all about it. Try to exercise regular. Try to build some normal social relationship. Have a supportive network. Look for certain balanced lifestyle and hardy personality. Always look for a smaller win rather than a large win, and go for relaxation techniques, as the case might be. Let us understand the short-term strategies, which is basically reframing, contextualizing in a different fashion altogether. If you are getting stressed out on your situation, why do you think other persons are not able to be stressed out, or why a particular person is not very happy the way you are conducting yourself? Think it from their point of view. So it's basically reframing your context altogether. Have the uses of imagery, as the case might be. So types of stressors is what we can do about them. Now we can have a time stressors that is based on the workload. Absolutely, yes. If you have been overloaded with work, it is a time stressors. You can continue to work efficiently. Yes, definitely efficiently for a certain period of time. But for throughout your, if you can elongate the stress point or efficiency point throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, it becomes a little bit mental fatigue tends to creep in, and that is what work overload is all about it. Or when you have this understanding that everything is beyond your control, then probably your tendency to give up is much easier. So eliminate those strategies, principles of time management and the delegation, as the case might be. So eliminate these time stressors, the time management. Effective time management can enable the managers to gain control over their times, as on when on basis, if you look into it. Now their time can be organized into fragmented, chaotic environment. Now effective time management means what? It means prioritizing your work, attending to the most urgent and important work at the earliest time, distinguishing everything what is important and what is urgent. Urgent is time based, important is work quality based. So focusing on the result and not on the methods as far as the outcomes are concerned, and not feeling guilty when you say no to something, someone, somewhere down the corner. You should always prioritize yourself and have a little less concern for the others. I am not saying not to negate the concern for the others, but try to say no. Try not to get bogged down with all responsibilities and you being probably taken for granted, and that should not happen. So let me have a time management matrix for yourself to go around it. Let us plot X. On the next axis, the urgency matters, matters which are urgent, which are not so urgent. So I have said very urgent being high and not so urgent being low. And similarly, the work which is very important and not so important, not so important and very important. So urgency, when their work is very important and important, you should do it in the first place, first hand, as the case might be, going around it. So if you can prioritize, then thereby you have this 80-20 rules, which I think is a wonderful rule by the Pareto's analysis that has been given to you, which is basically, for trivial activities, we spend 80% of the time. and the result yields are only 20%. On the other hand, activities which are vital, which will be only spent for 20% of the time, and the result is all about 80%. So what can we do? We should always stress on the vital part and ensure that this 20% of the time that we are going to spend are going to be a quality spend. We will put on earnest effort to sort the matters out, because at the end of the day, the result that it is the maximum that comes around it. So effective time management, too little time, too much to do is one of the things that we all suffer. We have a lot of work to do around it, but probably a very little amount of time being spent. How do I get more things done? This is the question. How can we cramp up all the activities with a limited amount of time that is there at our disposal? And that is what efficient time management is all about it. So let us produce first and foremost thing. Let us begin with scheduling. Scheduling activities are all about horizontal scheduling, vertical scheduling, and directing and controlling. Now, scheduling is somewhere on the corner. You need to do a work at certain point of time. Now, there are certain works which might be horizontal in natures, which can be delegated. So, as a person, you might delegate to one of your family members or to one of your co-workers, as the case might be. If you are not able to find enough time about it, for vertical scheduling, definitely you should be utilizing it. As far as possible, a combination of delegation, supervision, a combination of directing and controlling should be sufficient enough to ensure that the work gets done in a desired fashion. So, rules, let us understand the rules for effective time management, because once you can manage the time, I think stress will automatically be taken care of. Best thing is to read selectively, make list, everything in its place, prioritize it, multitask the routine, discretionary tasks job, divide up the big jobs, critical 20%, best time for the important job, arrange non-interrupted time. This is what we are looking for it as far as rules are concerned. So let us go for procrastinations. Never procrastinate. Never defer the work that can be done today as of this moment. If you have some leisure time, let us try to complete the work. Let us not have anything in our to-do list. No matter how minuscule the work is, no matter how unimportant the work is, keep a track of time. Set deadlines. Set yourself deadlines as to do what is to be done. Use waiting time. Designate time for busy work, closure on one thing a day, schedule personal time, limit worry time, and long term objectives. Continuous improvement is what we are looking forward towards it. So, tips for the managers: hold routine meetings at the end of the day. Yes, as a person, you can always recuperate and see what has been done and what could have been done. Set time limit, hold meetings only if needed. The agendas, the meeting minutes should be circulated, because this will keep everybody in the track of things and on their toes. Start on time, finish on time. Paperwork decision has to be done as on when on basis. Organize them and limit interruption as the case might be. So let us understand with the tip of the managers. I have always said about horizontal scheduling and vertical scheduling, or even for directing and controlling. Delegation is one of the work that helps out. If you can start delegating, not only it reduces your workload, but also it empowers your co-workers all together. It also infuses a sense of trust, a sense of responsibility in them, and probably you have been viewed as a person who is just, who is honest, and probably the leadership quality does creep in. So yes, delegation is must. It helps you to empower them, allow for the initiative there, give credit to whosoever they deserve it. Please give credit. And this, as a managers, the tip that I'm trying to direct to you is how you will not only segregate the work, reduce your workload, probably improve on the performances thereby, and improve. There would be a lot of time available to you to dedicate to the real prioritized work which you can actually make a difference. So types of stressors and what can we do with them. First and foremost thing are encounter stressors. It is all about role conflicts. It's all about issues. It is all about interaction. Now, these are the stressors that comes around as the role conflict issues and interaction comes around. Then we have the elimination strategies, the delegation, interpersonals, and the conflict resolution as it goes about it. How do we come across? It is the delegation, interpersonal skills. Now, there is something called resilience, as in social support, collaboration, self awareness, and emotional quotient, as the case might be. This is what we come to conclusions as far as resilience is concerned. Let us understand the situational stressors which is not situation which is not going in your favor or probably is going against you, and that is what the rapid change is all about. It can we eliminate those stressors? Is the work design and changing jobs that comes around it? If we can eliminate those situations, the things, so either we can change the work or probably the way that we do the work. So it is what we are looking at the elimination strategies. And then there are something called short-term strategies and resiliency, as the case might be. This is all that we need to do to enable that stress has been effectively contained. So work design is level of task demand, level of autonomy, individual controls and discretion, the level of interest that comes around it, the feedback that we impanel, the feedback that we give an importance to. You need to understand everything as far as work is concerned. Now, if we can redesign it so that it suits you and suits the work at the same time, the productivity is not being hampered around here. Now, let us understand as for an anticipatory stress. We are always, if you look at this particular pic, this particular as a person is on the crossroad as to what is to be done, how it is to be followed around, is very very stressful. This is all about anticipatory stressor. What if things are not going your way? What if you encounter an unpleasant expectation? There is this element of fear in you. That is what is anticipatory stressors are all about it. Now, can we have those elimination strategies? Why don't we try each of the path and give a proper time to it? After that, if things doesn't work around, please refrain from treading that path. So prioritize it, plan it, short-term strategies, and the resiliency that needs to be taken care of. Remember, stress is equivalent to your self-awareness. If you can manage yourself, I'm sure stress will be always be kept at a bay. So it is the values that you put in, the attitudes towards the change that you develop in, the cognitive style, the interpersonal orientation is what we are looking as far as self-awareness and stress is concerned. Remember what Mahatma Gandhi said: you can enjoy your life. Life is there. Remember, it's the enjoyment of the life that is important rather than doing a lot of things in your life in a very short span of time. So there is more to life than increasing speeds, as in, so enjoy life, be clear about your objective, and take everything in your strides. Do not get bogged down. This is how we will able to not only manage stress but also have a productive time. With this thoughts, I would love to end this particular presentation. Thank you for watching this video.